I'm very pleased to welcome you all to the first panel session of our virtual annual conference, the CEO panel session focusing on European Energy Transition 2030. I'm very pleased to introduce a distinguished panel of CEOs and industry leaders from leading European and global companies, which will discuss emerging and disruptive trends shaping our energy sector today and what the future of energy and technology will look like. I will now leave you in the very capable hands of our moderator, Jennifer Baker.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm hoping you can see me. I'm sure you can hear me. Welcome to this CEO panel, and we are looking today at the European energy transition for 2030. Now, we've heard this morning or already today from the Commission, from the Parliament, from the International Energy Agency, and now we're going to hear from the industry leaders. So what I want to do is introduce you to our leaders. We're going to talk a bit about the Fit for 55 legislative package has been put forward as part of the European Green Deal. And of course, it sets out the very ambitious targets from the European Commission to reduce its emissions by 55% by 2030. So how are we going to ask, how do we do that? There's a need to decarbonize, but how can we do that cost efficiently? This is all part of the Building Back Better post-COVID. We're going to have a look at what are the barriers to doing that and how those barriers can potentially be overcome and what the needs are in order to foster this change and also foster growth in Europe, as well as boosting European competitiveness and in general creating an entire ecosystem that is positive for the EU going forward. We're going to look at emerging and disruptive trends. We're also going to have a look at those that are shaping the energy sector and what the future of energy technology will look like. Now, we're going to take questions from you, our audience, so please do use that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you've got a question for a specific panelist, please say so. And if it's for the entire panel, please also say that as well. My name's Jennifer Baker. I'm going to be your moderator, putting your questions to our great speakers. So do get them in there early so that I can select the best ones. And it's a short panel, so time allowing, we will get to as many as possible. With that, let me introduce you to Enzo Bellavigna, who is the CEO of ENGIE. Vladimír Hlavinka is the CEO of TEDOM Group. Marko Dekena is the Executive Vice President of INNIO Jenbacher. Elzen is Vice President of the Power Generation Strategic Growth of Solar Turbines, and Didier Holleaux is the Executive Vice President supervising business units, gas and power networks of the global business line at ENGIE. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm going to each give you a short sort of opening statement of 2 to 3 minutes just to tell us a bit about your background, where you are and how you view this strategic question on Fit for 55. So Enzo, let me start with you, sir. The floor is yours.
Good morning. I'm in Philadelphia, so good afternoon. Good morning from Philadelphia and good afternoon to all of you in Europe. So Jennifer, my opinion, Greta Thunberg has already won. I mean, my opinion, but 5 or 10 years ago, what was decided in Glasgow a couple of weeks ago was not possible. Of course, many are complaining that what was decided is not enough, but I believe that the outcome is positive. The green wave is so high that nobody is able to stop it. Of course, there are some political leaders like the Chinese or the Indian that are just trying to wave and to surf the wave, but I believe the outcome is positive. Now is the time to manage the energy transition, because I believe that certain targets that have been defined for 2030 are not achievable, and we need more time to do it right. So many people, and unfortunately also some policymakers, are acting like there is no transition period at all, or we can be all greenwashed anytime soon. And I believe there is no green wizard here. There is no green magic wand. It doesn't exist. So we need a reasonable time to make it right. And of course, during this panel, we will discuss about it.
Thank you, Enzo. Vladimír, let me come to you and get your opening thoughts as well, please.
Thank you. Welcome from Czech Republic. So from my point of view, so we have to save the planet. It's necessary, but we have to split between the vision and between the politician vision, which could be drawn by the best way during 1 week, during 1 year, and reality. Yeah, and I can say that it's a lot of work before us to fulfill this vision. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, but it's need to hard work of our technician, of our leader in electricity sector. It's the first. Yeah, drawing the chart, it's easy for my point of view, but hard working, it's just before us. Second one is a question, and just now it's all in Europe. We are facing on the increasing of the price of energy, increasing of the price of gas. Yeah, and just now we have to divide between the meaning the people like elector in the election, and people like a consumer. Yeah, we have to very openly discuss with people that this Green Deal will lead that we have to define the new rules or condition how to deliver electricity and heat in their homework to the industry. Just now we have a very robust distribution grid. We have a very robust transmission grid, and it must be changed. Yeah, these robust grids are able to transfer the energy from the top to down. Yeah, just now we have to produce energy down and operate to top. Yeah, and it will be some kind of, I don't like this word revolution. Yeah, but it will be some kind of revolution, and I try to explain to my people, let's imagine 20 years ago, a mobile phone, yeah, with battery, and only you can dial the number. Just now you have iPhone in your hand with this all communication, and the same way we have to change the energy sector.
Well, thank you. That's a good analogy. Marko, let me come to you. Do you echo your colleagues' thoughts, or give me your unique position?
Well, thank you, Jennifer. I'm very pleased to be with you here today. The speakers before mentioned that timing is very essential. We must act now to address global warming and also the climate change. And with green technologies, that will help to achieve a balance of economic growth, energy affordable, and energy availability. And as pioneers and shapers of a low-carbon economy, we at INNIO Jenbacher have been dealing with energy, or rather with power generation, for more than 60 years. And around 60% of our installed fleet in Europe is running on renewable gases already, such as biogas or biomethane, and even hydrogen. So in particular, one fundamental question drives us. How can power generation be designed in a secure, affordable, and climate-friendly way? So today we have delivered more than 23,000 of INNIO Jenbacher's engines around the world, with a total electric output of more than 33 gigawatt. This is really amazing. And this is enough to power more than 54 million homes globally. So combined heat and power systems are a key to a secure, affordable, and climate-friendly power supply in Europe. And thanks to their high overall energy efficiency of up to, or even more than 90%, they help keep power and heat affordable, as they save up to 33% in primary energy compared to a solution where the power or the heat and the power is generated separately. Heat in a gas-fired boiler and electricity in a gas engine. So at the same time, they reduce CO2 up to 70% compared to coal-fired power generation and up to 33% compared to the separate generation of heat and power. And in addition, they are already gearing up to be ready for hydrogen. For example, Jenbacher engines will be offered for a ready for H2 option starting in 2022. This allows for the addition of 25% hydrogen to the pipeline gas and an easy retrofit to 100% hydrogen operation. That means no carbon lock-in and no risk in stranded assets. We need to maintain our existing infrastructure because in 2020, for example, the world's first 1 megawatt gas engine was retrofitted from natural gas to hydrogen in the field of Hamburg in Germany. And this will be only the first example. So we will see a lot of more showcases and pilot plants in the coming years and ramping up to hydrogen more and more in the next decade. We have thus demonstrated that conversion in the field and operation of a gas engine with natural gas hydrogen mixtures, and also up to 100% hydrogen is possible as soon as hydrogen is available in sufficient quantities. And here now is the bottom line. We must look to technologies that can be converted to carbon neutral power generation systems. Combined heat and power systems can be operated on conventional gas today and on renewable gases and hydrogen tomorrow. This is sustainability in practice, which is done today. CHP is the pathway for a secure, affordable, and climate-friendly power supply in Europe.
Thank you very much, Marko. And I have to say, I'm struck that you've already started talking about hydrogen. It's something that's coming up a lot. I've recently done chemicals conferences and some raw material conferences, and it is just this area that seems to be holding out so much hope for the future. Let me turn now to Elzen. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but give us your thoughts on that in your opening position.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to COGEN Europe. Thank you for having me. I'm very happy and honored to be here with you this afternoon. Yes, Fit for 55, it's 55% carbon emissions by 2030 is a very challenging target, but above all, also a very complex journey. And renewable energy sources are front and center of the discussion, of course. But as mentioned by some of the other speakers, and also the keynote speakers mentioned it needs to be a balanced approach. We need to balance that drive for lowest possible CO2 emissions with resiliency and security of energy supply. It cannot go at the cost of that, and it needs to be affordable, as also mentioned by Marko earlier. And natural gas and CHP are part of the solution. I have no doubt about it. I think most of the people here will agree with that. And what I'm encouraged with is that I see more and more stakeholders also expressing the need for natural gas and CHP to be part of the solution. And if we then look at CHP, one of the very important aspects is it can be implemented immediately. The aspect of timing came up earlier as well. And we cannot wait with measures or solutions that come into place in 2030 or in 2050. If we wait until that time or only have long-term solutions, we fail to be successful. And CHP is something that we can implement and do today. Not huge infrastructure is required to increase CHP in Europe. It's a very well-known technology and method to generate energy very efficiently. Now, what might be required is that we operate CHP differently going forward. we know CHP as being operated mostly base load full time all the time, and we might need to adapt CHP operation to work with other energy generating assets to select the most efficient and most or least, I should say, environmental impacting way to generate the energy at that specific moment. Tools like digitalization of your plants are available today, and that allows us to operate CHP more green, if you want, and also more economically. Now, it goes without saying how CHP, cogeneration, is adding to resiliency of the grid and to the security of power supply. I think we see that now. And then to the point, what was also mentioned before, future-proofing technology that you implement today. We don't want to lock in carbon emissions by selecting a solution today. And gas turbine-based CHP is having that opportunity to adapt to green fuels, zero carbon fuels like hydrogen in the future with minor modifications once these fuels become available in sufficient quantity, but also at the right price. Today, we are operating gas turbines around the world, over 55 units already with high hydrogen content fuels. And there is nothing in the way to implement cogeneration today and convert that to hydrogen once that fuel is available. Now, last but not least, I think in this journey to low carbon, it is essential if we want Fit for 55 to be successful, we have to have alignment of the interests and the efforts of all the stakeholders. And that's the stakeholders, and I mean the consumers, the industry, the technology providers, the OEMs, we are Solar Turbines, one of those, and the legislators. And the exciting thing is, I think we have all of those three stakeholders or representatives of all these three stakeholders here available today. So I think we're looking at a very exciting session here this morning.
Thank you. Indeed, we did hear from the legislators here at the EU level. Didier, let me turn to you lastly to get your opening thoughts and your reflections on what you may have heard so far and what you would like to talk about over the next 1 hour.
Thank you, Jennifer. Like my colleagues, I share the view that we need to have at the same time a clear vision of the long-term future, let's say 2050, but a combination with reality, today's reality, and how we combine that in order to achieve the vision while ensuring to our fellow citizens security of supply and affordability of energy. And let me share a few topics about this vision. First, ENGIE's own vision. We have made a clear commitment that we want to be fully decarbonized on all three scopes by 2045. And for a company like ours, which not so long ago was a big coal-fired power plant producer, that's a big challenge. But we have made all our calculation, we have our plans, we implement them, and we are committed. Second, in this vision, a large share of what we are doing is, in fact, helping our customers to decarbonize their own activity. And here it gives us some optimism, because when we look at Glasgow, we are a bit disappointed, obviously, like anybody else. But when we look at what we do concretely with our customers, we are able to design with them clear plans and pathways to decarbonize their whole activity. And in many cases, we invest on their behalf. And it's so important for us that we have decided to publish a methodology on how do we account for the savings in terms of CO2 that we do with our customers. We have published that in July. It's open source. Anybody can criticize or improve. And we think that's very important in terms of accelerating the energy transition. Then another important topic of our vision when we look at the global system is we are absolutely convinced that an energy system which relies on several energy carriers is more resilient, less costly than one which is only based on power. So we believe that the future is a system where, yes, there will be more direct electrification of some uses, but there will be gas network, probably two of them, one methane, one hydrogen. There will be heating and cooling district networks or industrial networks, in fact. And we believe that the combination of all that, the optimization depending on what is locally available as energy and what are the local needs, will allow the system to be more resilient and less costly. And obviously, combined heat and power have a major role to play here, because that's the link between a gas network, a power network, a heating or cooling district network. The third point that I wanted to share in this preliminary discussion is that we strongly believe that we need to use all the available technology to accelerate the transition towards energy transition. And we think it's very dangerous to say there is only one pathway and you need X% of that, Y% of this one, and Z% of this one. Nobody knows what the final mix will be. What we know is that we will encounter difficulty implementing any plan we have. And therefore, we have to plan for more than what is needed, because we know that some of the things we want to implement will not succeed. Some other will be more successful than expected. And at the end, we can expect that in average, we will be able to meet the needs of our fellow citizens and our industry in terms of security of supply, affordability, quantity of energy, quality of energy that they need. That was my preliminary statement. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Well, it leads on very well to my first question, which is, you mentioned that we might not achieve everything that we set out to do. Certain things may not work. But I want to look at the Fit for 55 as part of a stepping stone on the path towards a longer term aim, which is net zero emissions by 2050. I'd like to get your thoughts on whether that's actually achievable at all. I know some people think it isn't and others are very optimistic. And what might be the most effective way to take this step by step in getting towards that longer term aim? What might be the prerequisites, both for the Fit for 55, but then moving further onwards towards net zero emissions? Enzo, I'll let you start with that. I would like to hear everyone's thoughts on this question.
I think to answer your question, you can take different perspectives. You can take, of course, the perspective of policymakers or of companies like AB or the many others that are present and represented in this panel. But let me take a different perspective. That is the one of the many industrial companies around the world that are supposed to achieve those targets. I meet every day many top managers of many industrial companies in the world, and other than the buzzwords, like sustainability or the given phrases that now are trendy and even required, I think many of them face a sort of energy puzzle. And to solve this puzzle, I think there are 4 elements that are needed. So the first is knowledge and advices, because nobody really knows how to make it right in the time that has been indicated. The second point is reliable green technology in terms of performance, efficacy, and also maintenance, so service. The third is infrastructure that arrives at the very last mile. So just out of the door of companies and households, companies cannot be required to solve the infrastructure element. And as one of my colleagues correctly pointed out, CHP can be a perfect solution because the level of infrastructure that is required is very limited. And then there is a fourth point that I want to mention. There is the return on investment that should, it cannot be measured in decades. So we cannot ask companies to make investments that have a return in decades. But at the same time, these managers have to change their mindset, because to make a contribution, also it cannot be measured in 1 or 2 or 3 years. Frequently, I meet people that are responsible for P&L of their companies, and the discussion goes around exactly this. And so my point of view is there should be a balance, and again, it's a very delicate transition, and addressing these 4 points with the perspective of industrial companies, for example, would give a first answer.
Marko, yes, you.
Well, Jennifer, this is a good question, and I believe that really there is nobody in the world who really can say what is the real, let's say, what is achievable until 2030. But there are some thoughts for sure. And the first thing, I think, what is of major importance is the timing. So, and really, I always say we must act now. We have no time anymore. We need to act and take the measures today. So, and one thing is also clear, there will be no secure and affordable and climate-friendly power supply in Europe without natural gas as bridge fuel and without hydrogen, or let's say CO2 neutral fuels as green hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, you name it, in the future. And then I think there is also one thing we need to urge policymakers in Europe. There are a lot of criteria which we need to settle and which we need to fix. So, for example, we need a very clear commitment to natural gas as the bridge fuel. And natural gas must be taken up into the EU taxonomy framework or regulation framework. This is one point. Also, we need to maintain, as mentioned before, the existing infrastructure in order to use it for hydrogen in the next future, maybe mixtures first, and then also going to 100% hydrogen in the future. CHP should be prioritized over other technologies because of the high overall efficiency of more than 90%. So if we think about natural gas, which is still fossil, but even renewable gases, which is very valuable, whether it's biomethane or whether it is hydrogen, we want to get the most out of this fuel. So therefore, prioritizing over other technologies, I think, is mandatory. Then the convertibility from natural gas to hydrogen should be part of the incentive scheme so that we do not see a carbon lock-in in future, because this is what everybody wants to avoid. Not only the industry, policymakers, and the whole world also deserves it that we that we are on a pathway to a renewable and green future. So then we need to include H2 in our European, but especially in the national hydrogen strategies for power generation, which is not the case today in all countries. This is also very important so that incentive schemes are set in the right way. We need a technology openness, what I do not see in many cases. And when I say technology openness, I have in mind two things. So the first thing is when it comes to the color of hydrogen, whether it's blue or whether it's green or whatever, it should be open because this drives innovation for the future. And then also the second thing is openness in the technology of the conversion, how we convert energy. And I mean whether it's a gas turbine, whether it's an engine, a gas engine, or even a fuel cell, all systems needs to be supported, needs to be financed and incentivized, because you never know what is the real technology which will make the race. And I am personally sure that for all three technologies, there is a room where we need all of them. So, for example, fuel cells in the smaller housing sectors with lower powers. In the very big power range, I see gas turbines very clearly. And in the mid-range, in the megawatt range, I think gas engines are the best choice. So we need all three technologies, and we need this openness. Then we need a very clear timeline, which we need to define for all stakeholders to develop the infrastructure. Also, companies, the industry, and also stakeholders which are developing and also selling units which we need, storages, for example, but also other devices in the network. So, and then we also need incentives for H2 pilot projects. So there are a lot of things I think we need to come closer to the target to achieve 55% reduction in CO2 until 2030.
Thank you very much. That's a great take. Ad, let me come to you. What's your thoughts on this aim for net zero?
Will we ever reach net zero? But it's not the relevant question, I think, almost, because it's like with safety, right? We set a goal of 0 incidents. You cannot set a goal of several incidents. The only reasonable goal is 0 incidents. And that's the same maybe with emissions. We have to reach for the top. But what is relevant is that we take action now and don't wait and don't only plan for future opportunities that help us reduce emissions. And I think there is a lot of technology available now, and we have to make sure again that the framework is in place to allow these technologies. And CHP, we're talking today about CHP, is finding its way to the market, and that we are not setting rules and legislation and support mechanisms, subsidy mechanisms for other technologies who are maybe greener, but who inhibit the development of immediately available efficiency improvements like CHP. So I think we have to be clever with the rollout of all those mechanisms to support technological advancements.
Vladimír, same question to you. You've heard sort of the prerequisites that some of the other speakers believe must be necessary. What are your thoughts?
So from my point of view, I have some visions that we have to show our customers that we have a technology which could help with fulfilling this green goals. Yeah, how? The CHP is only one technology which can use a wide range of the gas, yeah, from natural to the H2. Second one, if I mentioned in my previous speech that the main problem will be with the grid and transmission to electricity with customers, the CHP for future will be only one technology which could help keep the stability of the grid. We have to add to our CHP technology some IT solution, some digitalization, and show our customer some additional value added for them, not only some subsidies, high efficiency, cheap heat, and some electricity, but to be able to incorporate the CHP piece by piece to the virtual grid, to be able to support the grid and to be able to deliver system services for the grid. It's a first step, not to be only the producer of heat and electricity, but to show that future is to take a part of a responsibility for a stable grid in the future and to help the renewable to grow up. Yeah. And it's our view to show our customers, because all is about the money, that is not only about the Green Deal and some ideas. It could be feasible from the money point of view, and CHP could play a more significant role in future, but not only heat and electricity, but stabilization of the grid.
And Didier, once again, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, thank you. I will try not to repeat what my colleagues have said, and obviously I can probably endorse most of what they have said. Perhaps just as a general statement, we fully support the idea of the Fit for 55 package. We think we need to achieve something like the 55% reduction by 2030, and we as a company will work very hard to be in line with that. Now, obviously, there is some need for improvement in the proposal which have been done in the Fit for 55. A few examples. First, we need a bit more technology neutrality. If I take just one example, which is a bit far away from cogeneration, but vehicles, the choice which is made to consider battery electrical vehicle as a reference is probably contestable. There is no reason why biomethane, compressed biomethane, should not be considered for some kind of mobility. It's a renewable fuel, low emission, and so on. So more technology neutrality. Second, perhaps give us more certainty or more predictability in terms of carbon price and carbon border adjustment mechanism. Because we see that with our customers, you know, when we discuss our customers at 30 euros per ton of CO2, they start thinking about changing their process, improving efficiency, and so on. At 50, they decide to move. But by the time they decide to move, the price is already at 65, and it's costing them dearly. If they could have predicted that the trajectory was going to 65, they would have made their decision 2 years early. And it would have put them in a better economical position. It would have saved carbon budget for the planet. So we want more predictability on the trajectory of carbon price. And that's something that is missing today. Still on the Fit for 55, we want more role for biogas. I think it was mentioned by Marko as one of the technologies that can be used. And obviously, we think that it's mentioned here and there in the Fit for 55 package, but it's insufficiently recognized as a major tool for the transition. And finally, another example, the Commission has published a communication on what they call energy sector integration last year in July 2020. But we have not seen real implementation of this willingness to promote integration in the Fit for 55 package. Just let me take a few examples. Combined heat and power. Today in France, we have a problem, which is the end of the feed-in tariff for combined heat and power. So at the time where we want to improve efficiency, the risk is that we will stop existing CHP just because the feed-in tariff stops, which from a global point of view for the planet is stupid. So how do we improve these sort of things? How do we make sure that hybrid solution, like hybrid heat pumps, where you combine a gas boiler and a heat pump so that you can switch from power to gas according to price, according to congestion, according to the time of the year, and things like that. We need to have a market design which encourage the use of such tools which will link the different networks, make the global system more efficient, more resilient, less costly. And that, I think, is a very important topic. Fuel cells are a good example. A lot of people object to hydrogen, saying by the time you have converted power in hydrogen and back to power, you have lost 70% of the energy. But in fact, if you use the heat of the fuel cell, then you come back to more than 50%, even 60, 65%. So how do you encourage people to use fuel cell as a combined heat and power tool? And that's really in the details of the market design. That's the kind of things that we think we can improve in the Fit for 55 package.
I want to remind our audience once again that you can use that Q&A button at the bottom of the screen to send your questions to our panelists, but please do say to which panelist your question is addressed so that we know who to direct it to, and to be as concise and clear as you can. Now, I think some of you have touched on this issue already, but I want to know, is there a trade-off in how decarbonization can be delivered versus industrial competitiveness or EU competitiveness with regard to the rest of the world? Do we see any trade-off there? And likewise, there's a lot of discussion at the moment, I think one of you mentioned buzzwords, but about sustainability and resilience. Is there some sort of balance to be struck that one counteracts the other in any way? Marko, let me start with you this time to get your thoughts on those. I'll let you pick which area you want to talk about.
Thank you for this question. Competitiveness is a very important thing, I think. It's all about increasing the resource efficiency. Resource efficiency means energy efficiency, right? And there is a clear answer for that. It's, from my point of view, CHP is a very good way and the key to secure affordable and climate-friendly power supply. So CHP can save 33% savings in primary energy compared to separate power generation, heat and power, and also 70% in CO2 compared to coal power plants. For example, INNIO Jenbacher, we will offer our H2 ready portfolio starting in 2022 and up to 25% of hydrogen in pipeline gas. It's easy to retrofit. So about 20 to 25% of the cost only is needed to get from natural gas to a hydrogen power plant. And with our digital solutions, including our energy management system, decentralized technologies will be the key for a green energy future. So I think this is competitiveness, what we can generate here in our community.
Didier, perhaps I could get your thoughts on whether there are trade-offs to be made, and if so, where they should or could be made, and what would be the ideal outcome.
First, let me start with the second part of the question, trade-off between sustainability and resilience. I think there is no trade-off to be made there for a very simple reason. If the system is not resilient, it will not be sustainable. If we provide an energy system which leads to blackouts, our fellow citizens will punish us. They will not tolerate that we tell them that because we wanted to be fully green, we consider that the fact that they have no power at some time of the day is acceptable. So we have to make sure that the system is resilient, that it provides a service our fellow citizens want and expect if we want them to accept all the other consequences, which may be cost, which may be accepting wind farms in their backyard, which may be some other consequences, but at least we need to tell them the system is resilient, it will provide the service. Furthermore, combined heat and power, as Marko just said, is a system which proves that energy efficiency and sustainability goes hand in hand with sustainability. So we are confident that both of them are not only compatible, but they go hand in hand. And when you look at improving the one, you need to be sure that you also improve the second, and it's possible. Now, about competitiveness and fighting against climate change, I think we have to take a global view, and the EU and the government has to take a global view. What matters is a global carbon footprint. It's not the emission in one country. And therefore, if the way we behave leads to exporting our emission towards China or other parts of the world, it's not good for the planet, and it's not fighting climate change. So we have to make sure that whatever we do to go to the 55%, we don't do that by just exporting our pollution or exporting our CO2 emission towards other countries, that we keep them inside Europe and we make them cleaner. And that may mean a carbon border adjustment mechanism. That may mean other tools, but we need to make sure that it works. That's probably one part also of the Fit for 55 package that we need to improve.
Let me come to you and ask, to build on what Didier was just saying, a little bit about where is the role of European leadership in a global context?
So, as I said, it's a complex journey, right? What I think is very important when you set up regulations and framework for the industry, for the consumers, for the technology providers, one very important aspect is the predictability of those outcomes, of those measures. When we ask from technology providers to invest in technologies, to develop pilot plans, when we ask from consumers and industries to invest in new technologies and build out higher efficient plants, there needs to be clarity. What is the impact financially, how they can benefit from those investments and initiatives. And I think that is one of the major aspects of all the, let's say, the variety of rules and regulations that we intend to implement.
Vladimír, same question to you. Perhaps you could reflect on whether we have these trade-offs and where Europe is leading the way.
I think that electricity market and producer of electricity, it's a long-term distance running. Yeah, it's not sprint. And all measurement in Europe have to be based on the technological development, and second way, some starting subsidies, but from the long-term view, it must work without subsidies. Yeah, if we want our approach will be used on the rest of the world. Yeah, it must work without subsidies. It must work for the long-term perspective, and not to be only based on some short-term measurement which was approved by the European Committee or local government. Yeah, is necessary. Yeah, and from this point of view, I think that CHP should play and could play this role. Yeah, because it's fully feasible from the long-term perspective. It has some role in this decarbonization process. Yeah. But is it some kind of change of mining, especially, for example, we are very active in Poland, in Czech Republic. If you came to the industrial heating company and say, okay, you don't need this big unit, let's split to the small one. You can operate like one unit, like a virtual power plant. It will be perfect in the money. Yeah, they will start thinking, yeah, do we need it? It is some kind of revolution. But again, it's not like a 1 year solution. It's a long run distance. And from my point of view, it's a big change for Europe because our population agree with this and wants this, to show that we are able to develop the technology, we are able to develop the market, legislation framework, which could work not only in Europe. It's our change.
Thank you. And Enzo, to you, your thoughts and perhaps your reflections as well on what the other colleagues have said.
All excellent points. I want to go back to one word that you used before, Jennifer, asking the question about competitiveness. And I believe it has different meanings depending on which perspective you take. Let me give you a couple of examples. So if you take the word competitiveness from the point of view of a listed company, or in any case, a multinational, of course, from an energy point of view, this means basically three things. One is saving money through energy. The second one is making money through energy, maybe selling the electricity to the grid, for example, with the feed-in tariff. And the third one is avoiding sinking costs, because, for example, if the grid is not reliable, there may be losses in production. But if you take the same word competitiveness and you take the view of a country, in that case, you have to add something more. There is, for example, the ability to create jobs through the energy sector. So I think what CHP has already proven is the ability to address and be extremely effective to support competitiveness, both for, again, companies and countries.
Thank you, Enzo. Let's move on a little bit and talk about what you view as the right fuel mix for the future. I know, again, many have touched on this, but how do we ensure that investments today avoid stranded assets and carbon lock-in? Ad, let me ask you to give us your thoughts on that question.
I think the most clear example I think I could think of this is our ability as OEMs to provide equipment that can run on green fuels and make sure that is easily, let's say, adaptable, retrofittable to existing equipment, which is the case. So if we take the example of hydrogen, which is top of mind of many people when we talk about emission reduction, greenhouse gas emission reduction, and for sure, hydrogen plays an important role. But the complexity of hydrogen economy is huge. It requires infrastructure, it requires development of technology, it requires aspects of safety to be addressed, it requires the legal framework or the framework, the legislation framework to be in place. So that will take time. And if we are waiting with implementing technology and solutions with hydrogen until everything is solved, we miss the boat. We have to take decisions and measures now. And when I take gas turbines or CHP solutions that we build now that immediately create an emission reduction for the moment it's implemented without all too much efforts on infrastructure and what have you. And this equipment and these solutions are ready to accept the hydrogen once it becomes available in the sufficient quantity and at the right price. I think then we have an excellent example of future-proofing and future-proofing technology and solutions that are helping us towards a 2050 goal, right? We have goals of 2030, very pragmatic. What do we do today? And CHP fits in there, but CHP fits in that sense also in there in the road towards a 2050 goal of net zero.
Vladimír, I'd like you also to reflect on this idea of, shall we say, future-proofing investments when it comes to making choices.
In this case, I try to think about my own investment. Yeah, if I have the possibility to invest just now, yeah, it will be definitely some technology, CHP, yeah, what I invested. Second one is all technology which has some connection to the hydrogen and another gas. And the next one is not surprised, but it will be some technology of the small modular reactor, yeah, because it's new. Yeah, the way why? Yeah, because if you will see some electricity map producer, you can see, and next one is a hydropower plant producer. Yeah, you will see the electricity map of the Europe. There are only several countries which are able to reach the goals just now to 100 gram CO2 per kilowatt hours. It's France with this nuke. It's Switzerland, nuke and water. It's Norway with this hydropower plant. It's Sweden hydropower plant plus water. And in the middle of the Europe, you can see only the possibility, some renewables, some nuke, and some CHP. My first fourth choice of investment, my own money. Yeah, I have a money only on a CHP. Yeah, I don't have enough money for nuke. Sorry.
Didier, over to you, please.
Yeah, first, just let me have a general remark about stranded assets. It's surprising how many people tell us you cannot invest in gas because it may be stranded. At the same time, they want us to strand coal assets as quickly as possible. So, and also, you know, as long as we are working in a capitalist system, destructive creation means that you have stranded assets. The old businesses have assets which they are producing, and today comes a disruptor, and the previous assets are disrupted and stranded. So in itself, stranded assets are not so much of a problem. Obviously, you don't want to have billions and tens of billions of them, but it's part of the normal life of an economy. And we will have some in the energy transition. As I said, we cannot know which technology will win in the future. We will need to plan far more wind farms, solar farms, dams, CHP, and so on that we can build, because some of them will face opposition, will not get their permits, will lose their customers, and so on. And all the studies you have done, perhaps the preparation of the work, will be stranded assets. Is that a problem? No, it's normal life. We know that it's part of the economic life. So stranded assets is a problem if you put billions of euro in assets which will be stranded shortly, but it's not so much of a problem in principle. What is a real problem is locking. How do we avoid locking? First, we have to remember, as soon as we speak about gas, that biomethane being fully renewable, the fact that we produce more and more biomethane in Europe will rescue a lot of existing assets from being stranded, because they will be able to run for many more years using biomethane. Some of them may be baseload today and will be only peaking assets tomorrow, but still they will have a value and they will run very few hours, but on pure biogas, and therefore there is no lock-in. Other examples about this absence of lock-in is obviously H2 readiness, which was mentioned by Ad and Marko and some other. So another way is also accelerating depreciation. Traditionally, big gas assets were depreciated over 25 years. For pipes, 40, 45 years. There is no reason why we should not depreciate them on 20 years if we want. If we think they will be very useful during these 20 years for the energy transition, we can make sure that by 20 years from now, they are fully depreciated. And there, it's not stranded assets anymore. It's an asset which has been useful during 20 years. So all that, we need to be very flexible. We need to be very pragmatic. Keep in mind what is needed to accelerate the energy transition, what is needed to save the carbon budget. And it requires that we build a gas pipe and a gas turbine, which will be only used for 15 years or 20 years, so be it. I don't see any problem in that. If it works this way and we demonstrate that we save carbon budget by doing so, let's do it.
Enzo, your reaction, please.
I want to use the example of, Europe has been a leading continent, for example, in biogas. Germany has 11,000 biogas plants. Italy has 2,000 biogas plants. And of course, a lot of investments have been made from the general, from the governments through feed-in tariffs, but also from companies that have, for example, purchased biodigesters. I connect with what Didier was saying. So in the transition from biogas to electrification to biogas to upgraded to biomethane, a lot of assets that could be, could go on stranded, in reality could be saved to continue to produce biogas to electrify, but maybe some of them or all of them to be also converted to produce biomethane. And so this is a very clear example of how to combine decarbonization together with the ability to support companies to avoid stranded assets.
Marko, do you have anything that you want to add to that? I think we've had quite comprehensive answers.
Net zero emissions can be reached via many pathways. And there is nobody who really know what is the real pathway in the future. No matter which pathway it will be, we from INNIO Jenbacher, we believe that natural gas will increase for power generation in the next decade in order to support electrification and also the phase out of coal and of nuclear power. And to prevent blackouts, technologies are needed to balance the grid and also to generate heat and power with green hydrogen. Today with a bridge fuel, which is natural gas, and tomorrow with a CO2 neutral fuel, which is most likely hydrogen, or even methanol or ammonia. So there is a lot talking about how can those stranded or potentially stranded assets can be used. So there are also good examples. For example, in Kiel, we have, together with our customer, built up a large, or one of the world's largest gas power plant, which is most flexible and which runs on CHP mode. And there is, the heat is fed into the district heating, supplying heat to 73,500 households. And it saves about 1 million metric tons of CO2 every year, already today. And this power plant was built in order to replace a coal power plant. So, and now, at that time, we are continuing our cooperation with Stadtwerke Kiel on a concept to modify the coastal power plant to allow the use of green gases with high content of hydrogen in the future. So I think this is a perfect example how to collaborate in order to manage and to realize this transition.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Now we have 10 minutes left. So I reckon that's about 2 minutes each for you to set out what your demands are from policymakers, from authorities, from agencies or enforcement. So what would you like to see in the future if you were looking in your crystal ball towards an ideal future? I'll let you start.
I think I would go back to my statement at the beginning. If we want to be successful here, we have to collaborate together. We have to have the interest and the engagement of all stakeholders bound together. If legislators go and work in isolation or drive political agendas instead of realistic, pragmatic agendas that are maybe sometimes much more difficult to explain, but there is a collaboration between legislators, technology providers, innovators, if you want, and the industry, the consumers, then we can safeguard all this seemingly contradictory aspect, right? When you say earlier in the discussion, we were touching on competition. Is competition harmed when we drive for energy efficiency? I think it's the contrary. Energy is a very costly good, right? It's a resource that has a price. If you use yet less to produce your end product, it enhances your competitiveness. And I think that when we don't dig in our own world, but we have an open dialogue and a joint effort to make this work, I think we will get there. And it's very complex, very well understood, but good cooperation will bring us forward. I'm convinced.
Didier, I noticed you nodding at some of that. Give me your final remarks.
Yeah, I think they will be relatively simple, and I will certainly repeat what some of my colleagues have said. If I were to make my wish list or Christmas gift list, I would ask for, first, more predictability. I mentioned carbon price, but I think predictability of regulation is very important to help our customers and ourselves to make wise decisions. Second, more role for biomethane in Europe in the future. The potential is huge. It's underused in the current state of legislation and regulation. We can do more. Third, more role for energy sector integration. Once again, the communication by the Commission was full of promises. We would like more regulation to support that, and naturally combined heat and power will benefit from that. And third and fourth, but perhaps the most important, we want a recognition that all available technology that can decrease the carbon budget, improve efficiency, and so on, will be required. So don't try to pick the winner of the race before the race has taken place. Allow all technologies which can be sustainable to compete, because we will need all of them.
Thank you. You're far from the first industry representative or stakeholder to call for consistent legislation in the EU in any sector. So I think that will be echoed widely. Enzo, would you give me your final thoughts or your final wish list, please?
I think, Jennifer, we have to start from a simple reality that Europe already leads in many aspects in terms of energy regulation, and also the use of energy, the efficient use of energy. I mean, if you take what happened in Glasgow, it's basically driven all the disappointment from the role of coal, especially used in certain countries like China and India. And from this point of view, the phase out that the European community has already done in terms of coal and nuclear power is already very positive compared to other continents. I think what is very important is for our policymakers to understand that companies make in order to make investments, need certainty. Without certainties, people that have budget responsibility would simply stop and wait. So give certainties, because this is the most important part. And again, CHP has been proven as a great technology, not only for the transition with the current fuels, but also for the future fuels. So our voice as an industry is a small voice compared to other industries. This is something extremely relevant to advocate during this event.
Vladimír, you have a final word now to send out your final message.
So in my final message, I will repeat only the ideas what was in my previous speech. So from my point of view, my wish list, let's think that the energy sector, it's a marathon, it's a long run distance. One legislation will, and results of your legislation we will see in 10 years, not immediately. Second one, it's a question of predictability. To be predictable, that means that we should prepare something. We should discuss with customers, but again, it must be in the money for the customers. And next things, please don't make decision without discussion. Don't make decision about some technology, because it will see in future. Just now, I can say you that it will be hydrogen, it will be batteries, it will be some virtual power plant. It takes some time, And just now, the making decisions, our favorite technology will be ABC. It's a wrong decision,
Finally, last but not least, Marko, what's your takeaway point?
I want to add to what has been said before. I think also innovation is very important and is the key for a green energy future. So what we need is political courage, and we need technology innovation. So when we look to the past, what Europe has already achieved on the way to a renewable future, I think then we have done a lot of great achievements. When you look to solar or wind power, to battery developments, or also even EVs, I think we have achieved a lot. And now I think it is the next big step is to arrange or rearrange the energy sector by sector coupling or sector integration. And I think heat and power is not enough. We also need to integrate and look to the transport sector, because in future, more and more EVs will be seen on the road, and this is also an electricity user. I think we need policymakers taking the right measures in order to promote the expansion of green fuels and renewable gases. So legislation, for example, or subsidies, quotas, incentive schemes, and also efficient CO2 pricing that are the main ingredients of the framework what the industry will need in future. But also, I mentioned before, technology openness for the color of hydrogen, but also for the technology of the converters, energy converters. We have here in Europe, a wonderful landscape of institutes and universities working very close together with the industry. I think this we also need to enhance and to use more in order to drive innovation. And last but not least, we need to do investments in H2 infrastructure for transport, storage, and also for the distribution of hydrogen.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and thank you for your thoughts and your comments throughout this discussion. I hope it has whetted the appetite of our audience for more to come over the next day or so. We're going to take a break now, so please go grab a coffee, get refreshed, and be back in 15 minutes when Kelvin Ross will be introducing the next panel on efficient solutions delivering the EU Green Deal.